Hello everyone, welcome back to another how-to build. This is Don with Leather and Stitch Customs. This is the whiskey bag by Karlova Designs. Go ahead and pause the video here so you can go ahead and get the supply list. Make sure you have everything from your D-rings, your loops, your 1-inch buckles, rivets, and if you want to add a shoulder strap, you want to add for your swivel hooks as well. I'm doing this build. She suggested use a 5 to 6 ounce leather, firm, stiff leather. For the main body of the build, for the gussets, the flap, and then for your handle and whatnot, and then for your handle wrap and your handle straps, as well as for your logo patch, you can use a 3 to 4 ounce leather. She does give you all the instructions here that you need. You want to go ahead and print this out at 100%. You can print it out in A4 format, or you can also print it out in US legal, but on U.S. legal paper, but in U.S. letter format, and that will use up just about the entire page for you as well. I like to use U.S. legal and then print it out in U.S. legal paper. That's just what I prefer. But like I said, go ahead and use a 5 to 6 ounce stiff leather. I did choose 2 veg tans here. One is my 5 to 6 ounce vegetable tan that's going to be used for the body and the gussets and the handle. And then I have a 3 to 4 ounce stamped milled leather that's also veg tan that I'm going to use for the softer leather portions, like for the handle wrap and the straps. Now what I like to do is I like to go ahead and mark on my pattern blueprint here what portions are going to be used for what leathers. And so for the handle here, I am marking down the pieces that are used for the handle on the blueprint pattern itself, because that's what I'm going to use for my stamped milled leather. And then you also have the handle wrap, and then you also have the patch, and you have the strap keeper as well, that are all going to be your 3 to 4 ounce. Once I have the pattern printed out correctly, I like to put all the pieces together. You're going to use the arrows that come together as a diamond on the page and make sure those lined up. Once you trim your pages down, you want to use a ruler here or yardstick so you can have straight cut edges. Now at this moment I do use one of my corner punches to make it easier on the curves, so when I come back with my straight blade, I don't have to try to come around a corner when I cut this patch out. And at the very end you will see that I have a really smooth straight cut all the way around this rounded edge pattern piece after I cut it out. I also like to take my projects down to my punch board. It makes it easier for me to be able to shift my pattern around as I'm cutting without having to shift my body around. So I adjust my pattern to make it easier for me to cut it out. And this came out quite nice. Now that I finally have all of my pieces cut out, I'm going to go ahead and age my leather, and what I do is I use an old technique where I use candle wax and I use a piece of felt, and the felt just burns the candle wax into the leather. Now I did bevel my edges on my gussets, but you don't need to. The gusset is going to be underneath the main body and the flap. You're never going to see those edges, so you don't really need to bevel those. I did bevel the edges on the rest. I beveled the edges on my strap and on my body and on my flap. Now we're going to move on to the 4 pieces you're going to need for the main body. You have your strap keeper, you have your strap that goes the length of the bag, and then you also have your 1-inch buckle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and place our 1-inch buckle inside of our strap, and you're going to see a total of 8 punch holes on one end of the buckle. So you have 4 on each side. You're going to fold and tuck that underneath, and you're going to start that stitch at the very end of the punch. But you're also going to stitch you're going to hand sew your strap keeper into place into these first 2 slots. So the first 2 slots on both sides of the strap where the buckle meets are going to be sewn right in between the folded area. And so you're going to be sewing this between all 4 layers. You're going to be sewing it between the strap itself, the strap keeper, the strap again, and then through the body of the bag in these first 2 slots. Next up here, we're going to go ahead and work on our gussets. So you're going to take the 2 straps that hold your D-ring in place, and you're going to slide it starting from the smooth side of the leather, the outside portion of the leather, on through the slot onto the fuzzy rough side of the leather. And you'll set your rivets from the inside, poking the stems from the inside going out to the outside. Now on the pattern or on the instructions, Karlova does suggest go ahead and sewing your gussets onto the body. But I am going to go ahead and sew my patch onto the flap first. And then I'll come back around and I'll set my pieces that will hold my handle into place. And so I like to gather all of my pieces together so that they're there and ready to go. Now here you'll see me go ahead and grabbing my handle strap and looping the D-ring onto those. But I'm going to tell you right now, don't do that. Don't put the D-rings and the strap keepers or the handle straps in just yet. You're going to actually want to loop those D-rings into place with your handle when you're building it out. And then wrapping your or looping your straps through the D-rings and then into place through the flap of the bag. But I will show you that here in just a second. One other thing that Karlova suggests is skiving your leather on the ends where the handle for your handle so that it's not as thick. And you can see here my leather's thinner on the ends. And if you don't have the tool for skiving your leather, you can take a regular razor blade, and it makes a bit more of a mess, of course, but you can use a razor blade and it will slim your leather down where you're trying to slim it, and it will be thinner in the places where you need it to be. And this is because it's going to become about 4 layers here once you run it through. Now I do take a little bit of this Aussie leather conditioner so that I can get rid of I can defuzz my handle on the veg tan because it becomes quite a mess and it gets all over the place. But that Aussie leather conditioner will smooth it out and keep pieces from popping up all over the place. Like I said, don't do this step just yet. You're going to see here in a moment why I say don't do this yet. You're going to want to put your handle together first, and you're going to want to put those D-rings looped together on your handle. And it's not like it was a big deal, but I did have to make a modification by setting a pad there in the middle of my flap in order to set my rivets on the handle. Right now I'm going to go ahead and sew my patch into place. You can get that done and over with. Now this is the part I should have did before I inserted my handle straps. You have the short portion of the handle, you have the long portion, the two inside rivet holes line up on both ends, and then your wrap is going to wrap around that. But here you will see me, I'm going to complete the interior support portion, running my rivets through. This is what you're going to do after you build your handles. So like I said, build the handle first and then do all of this that I'm doing now. Run your rivets through 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of leather here, because the handle straps fold and it becomes 2 layers. So make sure your rivets are long enough so that when you go to set it, your caps actually set onto your rivet stem. If it doesn't, they will pop off. This inside handle piece, doesn't matter which way it faces, no one's ever gonna see it. I face mine fuzzy to fuzz, but that's to make your handle a little bit more rounder. And so what I'm doing here is I'm gonna set my rivet, and this is why I said you didn't want to do the handle second, because had I put my D-rings in and then within my handle first, I wouldn't have had to do it this way. But like I said, if you make the same mistake I did, it's not that big a deal. You just have to find a way to protect your leather as you go to set your rivet. Go ahead and use your basic saddle stitch to stitch the support in place. And then after that, we will work on the handle wrap. And I'm going to use a baseball stitch for mine, but you can use whatever style of stitch that you like. Now right here I am going to use a baseball stitch, and I am going to walk you through it step by step. If you need to slow the video down, you can do that. If you need to pause it, you can also do that. But your handle wrap should reach perfectly in place. What you're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you're going to start either from the left or the right. If you want to follow me exactly, I'm starting from the right hand side, through the outside of the right on the very bottom stitch, very first one closest to you, through the inside of the left hand side of the stitch. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the needle in my left and I'm going to run it over the leather and under. So over the leather on the left hand side and under the leather on the right hand side. I'm going to pull that all the way through, And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the right. I'm gonna run it over the right hand side of the leather and under the left hand side. And you continue that all the way till you get to the end. This is also why you want to use a 3 to 4 ounce leather. You can even go a little lighter than that if you want to, but this is why you want it to be a softer leather that's easier to flex and bend around. Now that we're at the end, we're just simply going to take our needles from the opposite sides and run them over the leather and under and pull it out. You can do that for both sides. Pull them all the way through. You can cut the ends and then burn them. Or you can do like what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and tie one knot, pull it all the way tight, and then cut it. And then I'll burn my 1mm wax thread. Get the flame just close enough to the thread to where it starts to melt on its own. You don't have to touch the thread with the flame. It will melt down itself and you can tuck it in. This way you don't burn your leather and scar your project. And here we are, our handle wrap with the baseball stitch is done. Now we'll go ahead and measure out our thread for our gussets. When it comes to projects that have curves like this for a long stitch, I usually measure it out to about 4 times the length of that stitch. And sometimes I'll add a little bit more on just to be sure. I just don't want to have to start my thread over again. I'd rather just have a little too much on the end and cut it off, and I'll use those scraps. I save up all my scrap pieces that are like longer than 4 inches or something like that, because I could always use them for stitching loops. With the gussets, there is no left or right gusset. They're both the exact same. I suggest doing like I do here and starting with the front side of the bag. That means your strap, the strap that goes the body length of the of this bag is in the back. And so this is the shorter end. This is where you want to start, just to make sure that you start with the very first hole and you're not confused on your starting point. And this is just a basic saddle stitch all the way through. Now if you used a diamond chisel, which is what Karlova uses for her patterns whenever she's creating and whatnot, and you're using a 5 to 6 ounce leather or something even thicker, this is going to be a tough stitch for you. I used a hole punch. I have a four punch hole punch that I use, and then I also have my singles, of course. It just makes it easier for me to thread, and it doesn't put as much wear and tear on mainly my thumbs. Now I did at the end here, especially on some of the curves, have to use like a set of little pliers to pull the needle through sometimes when you get to little tight curves. But still, it's a lot easier for me to use a hole punch than it is for me to use a diamond chisel. I do have the diamond chisels, I just opted out of using them. Give yourself a round of applause and congratulations if you made it this far, because you're now at one of the easiest portions of the build. You're simply using a saddle stitch to stitch the flap onto the outer portion of the body of the bag. So this goes on the outside, not the inside. Simple saddle stitch and you'll be all good to go. See you at the end. Alright, boys and girls, this is it. Don with Leather and Stitch, running you through another build. This is the third one I've done of Karlova's designs. You can find all of her patterns at karlovadesigns.com. The link will be in the description. This is the whiskey bag. I've also done her mini briefcase card holder, and I've done the puppy backpack, which you can also find that video on my channel. Hope you guys enjoy this. Please subscribe. Until next time, deuces.